Hey, beautiful beings and everyone. I'm so excited for today's episode. I'm here with Boris Walter, and he is a counselor and life regression therapist. And he's also studying masters in psychotherapy. And how we came to meet was through a mutual friend who just felt like he had to connect us. And so I followed that feeling, and here we are today. So I just want to welcome you, Boris, to this. And if there's anything you want to say, to just say hello to the community.
Look, whoever's listening to your work must be beautiful as well, because they must be aligned with wanting to know the potential of the humans. So I thank you for having me on, and I'm looking forward to see where this goes and see if we can figure out a little bit more about human potential.
It's amazing. And you know what drew me to want to have this conversation with you was really, your experience in the education system and to understand humans. And you mentioned you work with, people that are, working in kind of really heavy physical industries, through to people that are spiritually connected. And so I thought that was really fascinating. And we did a life regression therapy session with myself just the other day. So I actually have the real experience of Boris's work. But I would love to hear, what was the thing that actually drew you into this career path or soul path or this work in the first place?
Yeah, all right. In short, I'm a boilermaker by trade, so a welder, a coated welder, and I was working mining and then oil and gas after that. And I was making what you would consider, I think, good money as a boilermaker. Some of the best, I think the best opportunities were given to me. And I assumed of myself, if I had this role for the rest of my life, would I be content? And the answer was no. And so that was a very good perspective to have the opportunity for. And so in that decision, I said, well, what would I do with my time if I was given time and money wasn't a thing? So it made me really think about my time and who I wanted to be in the future. And I know I'd always studied human behavior. I loved the books on human behavior. I went through a big transition myself as a child, as a teenager. So I thought, could I give psychology a crack? And at first it was getting over the imposter syndrome because I was a tradesman. To see myself in an academic world was like a big step for me. I really feel like I didn't belong. I mean, I barely knew how to write an essay, and psychology and counseling is all essay writing and report writing and statistics. And it's like, yeah. So anyway, I did it anyway. I leaped into university, did the 3 years. So I got the degree of psychology and counseling, and then got accepted into masters of counseling and psychotherapy. So it's about pursuing something meaningful for me, because I could do this every day and I can enjoy it because I'm learning more about humans, and it's intrinsically aligned with something pure to me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. I'm doing something that I know that I'm gaining something sustainable for the rest of my life. I could
Yeah.
do this, yeah.
Yeah. And what's always amazed me is the first time I even connected with you on a call is your bookshelf, like what's behind you. And, for you to say like you're a tradesman and boilermaker and, you didn't have that language or ability to write essays, it's like me meeting you, I've met you after the transformation. So,
Mm.
I can't even potentially see what you would have been like as a boilermaker or tradesperson.
I was dirty.
You're dirty. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, do you like for yourself, I'm just so curious about that transformation, because so many people in our world live, one thing and they just follow that through because they're scared to shift into what's in alignment. Like, what was it that had you drive and create such a transformation in your life to go from one industry to a completely different one? And I'm looking at those books in the background. You can't get
Mm.
more, philosophical or educational than those covers. So what
Yeah.
drove that, and what do you see as the key to that transformation?
um, hmm. Put it this way: there's a lot of things that are inside that compel one to align themselves with something more meaningful, but to make an actual decision and do something about it. You could say the fire beneath all of that
Yeah.
was a burning sensation that I could not settle for less than my potential, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So there was a sense of knowing. Now, a lot of people will be able to understand exactly what I'm talking about here. There's a sense of knowing that you're not all that you could be. and that doesn't sit well with me. And this is not me measuring myself against my peers. I did a lot of that as a teenager and adolescent, but then it was about separating myself from the group and seeing myself in a race against myself. So being better than I was yesterday. So I realized that yes, while I can be a good welder or a boilermaker, I could even go in many directions of things that I thought I wanted to do, but it's like I knew that it was not my potential. I couldn't really grow into what I think I could be, in I think adopting the most amount of responsibility that I could handle. And I think I always saw myself in somewhat of a interpersonal therapeutic position. I just didn't know what that looked like. So I went and just leapt in, because if I did nothing, I would never really know. So you face your fears, you step in there, you find out what you can do. Everyone's like, you should have done part-time to start off with instead of going full-time into uni while working and being a father. But it's like, no, you take on as much of a load as you can and you see what you're made of. If you fall short and you realize you're in over your head, then you slowly peel back a little bit. But I want to see, take on as much as I can handle, pursuing what is meaningful to me, and then we see what I'm capable of and we find the potential. It's always on those fringes. So within a short amount of time, yeah, I mean, I've turned into what would more align with the books behind me. But it still doesn't change the core. The core is still very curious about a human, still curious about my potential, where I may end up in 2 years. I still don't have a clear picture, but at least I know. Instead of looking at the tree, an analogy, a tree from the base growing out, imagine all the branches of that you could be as a child, as a teenager. And it's like, well, I could go pursue that woman, I could pursue that friend, I could pursue that career, that study. And it gets more and more aligned and focused towards that trunk, which is this soul you, that calling. You're in your full fruition, right? And you would know what I'm talking about here, Phoenix. It's like you're cutting out the branches and getting closer and closer to what is most aligned to your authentic self. And so bit by bit, I'm getting closer. And it's like, now I've got a few branches left, which I think, you know, based on trial and error, I'll either pursue that one or that one, and it'll eventually lead to my trunk.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just hearing in that such a high level of self-responsibility, because I meet so many people that it's always, they wanted to take the leap. They're too scared to. You know, as you mentioned, that their whole peer group is in a certain industry or their career. So there's too much to lose, or they feel there's too much to lose if they take the leap. But I'm just hearing like a level of self-responsibility and courage where you're taking the leap and you're still in the journey. Like there is still uncertainty. You know that you're taking choices closer towards, you know, alignment, you know, and pushing yourself to the edge. But that level of self-responsibility, the willingness that, no, I might have to pull back if, you know, it goes too far. And, you know, you mentioned you have, you know, a family as well. Like, when did the family, how old are your children, and when did that family come into the picture, and how did that come into the decision? Because it's not just being responsible for you, it's being responsible for other people. So how did you manage to navigate that as part of this transition?
Yeah. Good question. When I started the transition to an academic pursuit, I had my daughter. So she would have been 3 or 2.5 years old. That was my first daughter. She's now 6. And the other one is 2 years old, the younger one. So she wasn't around when I started the journey onto this academic path. But my wife, still remember the moment I sat down with her in a restaurant. It was a Malaysian cuisine restaurant in Vic Park around here. And it was the time that I was working 3 and 3 weeks on, 3 weeks out a week in the Wheatstone platform offshore. And I said to her, how would you feel if I went to university to study psychology? And she's a bit stunned, was like, is this just one of your things, you know, that you're just going to say you're going to do, and it's just an idea? I said, no, I'm dead serious. And I think I'm going to have a crack. And she was like, yep, if you want to do it, by all means, go for it, you know. And I said, well, things are going to change, right? Not just as in the routines or the dynamic, but I said the way that I talk may change. You know, if I'm going to be accumulating a new circle of friends, I'm going to be taking on more knowledge, reading things that I've never known before. I said, I may slightly change as well on the surface. Obviously, the core of me won't change, that built us. as a unit, but I said I may change over time as well. And as long as you're okay with those subtle changes, we'll do this together. And she was very on board, very supportive. And I would not have been able to do it without her. She's a very strong woman. And in terms of balancing the fatherhood with the children, I didn't want to be absent either. So I separated my time between, say, okay, if I'm going to study or I'm going to work on my assignments, I'm going to make sure that I'm away from her. So I'm not going to be, there's no proximal abandonment, they call it. So if I'm there working and she's constantly daddy, daddy, it's like if I keep telling her I'm busy, it references to her that, okay, when I'm with dad, he is busy. But if I'm not there, there is no meaning making from her behalf that when dad is close, it's he's busy or his work comes first. So when I'm home, I'm home. When I'm not home, she at least never experiences the busy father, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I made that my thing. So I just balanced it, fatherhood, working away still, and then studying at the same time. And I just made sure that I wasn't going to produce any anxiety or stress that was unwarranted, because I saw everyone at university stressing, and that was, I think, impeding their ability to be better in their field. So I said, I'm just going to remain calm. And I might be a bit naive in my calmness, but as long as I maintain the calmness, I'm going to give myself the best opportunity to take in as much information as I can and be present. So it's worked. It's worked. I've balanced it all quite well. I think my wife and kids would agree anyway.
Yeah, and you touched on so much just there. Like I felt the calmness from very first interaction, and that takes conscious effort. And as you indicated, it's stress. It can be this anxiety that causes us not to follow our path because we're thinking of all the worst case scenarios. And then I'm hearing how balanced you've created, because the things that are important to you are family, is being a good father, is the work, like that you're living your passion, but not bringing overwhelm to it, like being able to see the possibility, I can make this all work, and just coming down to that kind of rational, logical thinking and just separating things. So I can really hear and see that. And I think that's really beneficial for people to see that it is possible to make your dreams happen and balance that with family.
Well, that's it, Phoenix. Like you, even when I met you, it's like, even within the short amount of months that I've known you, there's been drastic changes again, even since our session. Again, it changes you. So it's like, there's two things I'm thinking about. One is the first line of defense to your potential is your belief system, right? It's like with the things that you tell yourself, or what you think is and isn't, right? And I really, that's where I challenge people a lot, because it's such a deep, deep topic. And it's not, we talk about beliefs and you can be more, but it's like, no, really, there's a lot of things that you're telling yourself, even on a grand scale of what you think reality is and isn't. A lot of it is to do with keeping you safe. And that's a psychological concept. It's defense. So we rationalize the world around us by giving everything categories and names so we can identify it. If I can identify it, I can predict it. But it's like, well, how much of your identity and how much of the categorization have you done of yourself that's not allowing you to step into a truer reality? We're assuming a reality, and it keeps us safe because it's congruent and aligned with our peers around us. But if you separated yourself for a moment and said, well, I am not the narrative of my peers, I'm something that watches everything. Now, we went through that mantra with you. I am not the body, I'm not the mind, and I'm not even my emotions. And that's a powerful thing, to separate yourself, to separate your perspective, that you are not what you perceive yourself or identify yourself as. So we challenge it. In that challenging, we say, well, while I see myself like this, what could I be if I did that, And it's usually the catalyst to go in that direction is to do with your passion or something that you've been thinking about a lot, something that you've been drawn towards by default, the patterns in your life, the conversations. There's a theme there if you're willing to look. But a lot of people won't look because it's too uncomfortable to make those sort of subtle changes, But even yourself, you've made those drastic changes, and you've gone against everything that you thought you were. That's it. In pursuit of something that is meaningful, authentic, and true, whatever truth could be. You're willing to see. And that's the main catalyst I tell people when they do these regression sessions with me, is that assume nothing. As hard as that might be to conceptualize, assume nothing. because we don't know the truth of reality. We have a whole bunch of assumptions that keep us safe. But in this
Yes.
moment, allow yourself to be so subtle that you're going to watch these little changes happen in your body that might identify or resemble more truth than what you've assumed in the past. And we
Yeah.
just see what happens. You know, it's a very
Yeah.
brave and courageous pursuit.
Yeah. And I love what you said there, because, you know, my journey is, even as I share online, I used to see when I was sharing online, where was that coming from?
Mm.
Where were my thoughts? Who was it concerned that I would see this? And it would shift everything. And there's literal moments of just shifting the whole reality to talk to different people, or to let certain people go from consciousness, to see what grasp that had on my reality, and sharing, and what I was willing to share and not share. And as you say, it's realizing that we are the alchemist. We are the powerful one that can shift our reality. And, you know, what I would love to dive into with you is, because your experience in doing some of these life regressions, you know, and for anyone that doesn't know what that is as well, maybe just to explain briefly what it is. But when you started to do this work,
Mm.
what was the powerful things that came through that really had you start to question, hang on a minute, what is the truth? What is reality here?
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I'm going to assume your listeners are probably more in line with a spiritual conceptualization of my practice, but I've made it very neutral, because I'm really going to assume I know nothing, right? And I'm gonna use my critical thinking um, as a handbrake to make sure I don't dive into something and start identifying or labeling or categorizing before I truly know the essence of it. So right now, the reason I'm pursuing, which is what I'm about to get into, the detail, why I'm pursuing it, is because the events that have taken place, unfolded in my practice, it resembles something more true in terms of helping someone experience life better. It's more true than the models in which have been given to me. So in the beginning, it was a very basic meditative tool, which is nothing fancy. I mean, all types of psychologists, psychotherapists will use meditation now, and it's fully accepted. There's no hocus pocus about it. It can be explained what's happening in the brain while you do it. Hypnosis is also, to a lot of people, it's hocus pocus, and a lot of people, I find myself needing to explain what it is, because people think it's still about a dancing chicken on stage. It's not that. Hypnosis, there's a clinical pursuit of hypnosis as well within psychology, and it's under the allied health practitioners as well. So it's a governed board of hypnosis. So clinical hypnosis isn't hocus pocus either. What I've done is, using hypnosis and meditative techniques, I've helped my clients get into states where they could feel themselves more subtly, and they could relieve the anxiety in the moment, so they could have more coherence with their thoughts and congruence with a truer self. So in saying that, there was maybe 2 years ago when this first ever happened, where something out of the ordinary happened. It was a young Australian fella. He is a painter by trade, and not the most articulate, not putting him down, but in terms of getting an idea of who he wasn't an academic. So yeah, he started going deeper and deeper, went into his past childhood, which is nothing crazy. 3 years old, 2 years old, he saw memories of him playing with blocks, the people around him, what they were wearing. It was all quite clear. And then he went and experienced his birth, and he saw himself being born for the first time in first person. So he said, I could feel the mother's blanket on my arms, and he said it was quite rough and uncomfortable. So he was having an emotional experience to this idea. And I'm still thinking, okay, I don't know what this is, whether he's actually remembering or he's creating something out of a bunch of hopes and minor details has been given over time. And then we went further. This is where it broke the rules a bit. He said, I said, let's just go back to a time now that's significant for you to see. And this is how I pose all my questions now. I'm never telling someone to go anywhere except go to a significant time that you need to feel, witness, or experience, right? That may be to do with what's blocking you today. Very general question. Now, here's where it gets a bit funny, because what I've experienced now, and I have over 100 clients to testify for this and recordings, the subconscious mind or this intelligence within does not discriminate between this life or something else.
Yeah.
And in that something else, I have, say, this particular client that we're talking about, the young fella, he went and said, I'm this person, a name he gave me, and I'm this age, which was in early 1900s. He's in this place, and he's explaining everything to me. And I said, okay, fast forward, fast forward. So he's taking me through this extravagant life that wasn't his body. So I thought, okay, he's fabricating an identity to maybe help him relieve the anxiety of a previous memory, right? A way that he can live this without being totally anxiety provoked. Anyway, so it goes right to the point where he sees himself dying, right? He says, I'm lying on a deathbed in a hospital. My wife, Susan, is next to me. She's on my left. She's holding my hand. He says he has 2 kids, Axel and Chris, and he loves them dearly. You know, so he's talking like an old man here. I said, how old are you? He says 72 years old, and he's dying of heart failure. He's aware of this, right? And I said, okay, I'm now thinking, okay, go ahead and we'll see where this goes, because I don't know where it's going. So he experiences a death, takes a big sigh in my chair and sort of just, okay. He says, I've now left my body, and he can see himself as this ball of light. And I said, okay, just go with it. I said, how does it feel? He says, euphoric. It's quite euphoric. And he says he's being drawn towards this big body of light. And then straight away, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe he's drawing upon the knowledge that we've heard of all the biblical ideas. It's the light in the sky, whatever. And then he said, well, what's the date of your death? What's the date there you've given me? That you're feeling? What's coming to you? And then it takes a few seconds, and he says, it's September 11th, 1981. And I said, oh, I'm writing this down. I said, that's very specific. And that's 15 years before his birth, my client's birth. Yeah. So I'm writing this down, and look, at the end of it all, we want to know, is this something or is it nothing? Mm. So I check the death records. Does this person exist? And by God, this guy is in the death records. And he has no relationship to my client. My client doesn't know who this person is, yet he was able to recall. Who knows about the details? I can't prove the details, but all we know, in that moment, he was able to recall the accurate death of an actual person with the correct spousal name and kids that has no relationship and passed away 15 years prior to his birth. So yeah, that happened. And then I decided I've got a decision to make here. And it's either I pursue this to see what this is about, even though we don't have a current explanation in the mainstream model of science, but I risk going down a rabbit hole that could alienate me in my community as well. But I ultimately said, because it happened, it must be significant, right? It's not nothing, it's something. And why it's something is because it actually relieves a lot of anxiety from him. Even though it's all fancy and it's nice to say that the human did this, what I'm pursuing it for is because this person was able to relieve anxiety in this life. It was a condition that he had, and he was able to address this trauma in a previous time or a different body, and was able to come to terms with that trauma, make meaning out of that associated pain, and then at the same time relieve his anxiety in this life, in this space now. So it's like, okay, that's something worth pursuing because it happened and he's had an actual effect that's made his life better. That should be the fundamental drive that is all therapy, that drives all therapy. So right now we have a rigid model of what we can and can't do, but I realize as well that is keeping people safe. We're all a little scared little chickens in our academic model. We're scared to deviate from the norm, you know. So I'm deviating. Like,
and it's ironic that you know, as people who study psychology or this, they understand this. The design of our system is to create safety and all this, and yet I see this constantly in the world. There's people who know things conceptually, and there's people who embody things, who actually live out to break through that barrier or embody what it looks like to be, something else based on that, theoretical model. And, something that strikes me is that, you've made a courageous choice to follow service. Like, it's come back to you for you. I'm going to do what serves. And is this understanding, the science, all these industries we've created in the world are based off, if you get back to the essence of it, what's the meaning of life?
Mm.
Right? Environment, science, medicine, you know, you just keep going. It's all coming in a different angle, you know, starting from philosophy and all this. And what you're saying then, what I've seen in my life is, well, what is objective reality,
Mm.
really? And actually, every single one of us, you know, however many people there are, 7.7 billion subjective realities based on our experience. And what you're saying now potentially goes experience beyond a lifetime. And then
Mm.
you add the animals and all the other beings in, you know, mycelium network is a living sentient being. The perspective, the realities of this is, you know, science, I say it is critical, super important, it helps us, right? But it's like this subjective reality is the reality I have. And I
Mm.
speak my truth, I speak my reality. Some people it super triggers. Some people feel like, oh, I get so much value, I feel so connected to it. But I
Mm.
recognize that my reality, subjective reality, is not the ultimate reality. It
Mm.
can't be objectively extrapolated out for every single human being. That would be
Mm.
very egotistical of me to think that, even.
Mm.
Or what other people are going to, you know, this comparison thing of I always compare it to myself. So I either put myself down because I feel worse than, or, you know, I can't relate to them. It's always bringing it back to me, 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 me.
Mm.
First, okay, I have a truth. And maybe that subjective experience is the most important thing, you know, is what I hear you saying. And even as the, you know, I know some doctors who have just gone down to Melbourne to study plant medicine, and now they're starting to really bring that through again, right? And they're putting these models on it and some, you know, constrictions and things, but they're seeing, and they've known this since the 60s, but politics got in the way. It helps. And then it starts to bring in the question of, you know, whether you know or I know for sure the past life thing, or does it matter if it
Mm.
is serving an individual, if it is serving humans, knowing that most of our reality is made up through beliefs and thoughts and energy, right? And we choose
Mm.
what serves us at a point in time. And, you know, you mentioned you've had, you know, now you've got data, you've got some evidence, right? Hundreds or 100+
Mm.
clients. Is in those experiences, what are the common things that you have noticed or identified, you know, across the broad range of clients?
Mm. Okay. A common theme that I'm getting, right, is the let's go based on depth, right? So when someone is able to let go, because it's not like I snap my fingers and they disappear into this other reality like you experience. It's a slow stepping down, wriggling down, and as you let go, you sort of you become aware of your body. And then as you become aware of your body, you're willing to experience the imagination. And as you experience the imagination, you're willing to live in that like it's a dream, because in a dream, you don't ever stop to think, well, yeah, while this bear is chasing me, it's just a dream, so therefore I don't need to be scared. No, it doesn't happen like that. A dream, you experience everything like it's real. So it's like you eventually try to get someone to that state. When they get there, right, one of the first things that I get people to establish is just to create a safe place, right? So it's like, just imagine a safe place, a place that you can go to. You know what I'm talking about,
Mm.
Phoenix. It's like it's a safe place where it's beautiful for you, where you can make positive changes in your life. No harm can come to you. This place is designed and for you. It's like, okay, every single person that I've ever said that to, and I'm not telling them what to create. They eventually just, I said, okay, what are you experiencing? What do
Yeah.
you see around you? They all say nature. There is never, oh, I'm in
Yes.
my apartment building and it's all ramp. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
Everyone, when you think and you expand and you experience, you create based on what I'm asking you to create, which is to do with safety, to do with beauty, to do with centering yourself, to make positive changes in your life. It's always created as a nature experience. There's always by the
Yeah.
beach.
Yeah.
It's always, I'm in the forest. There's
Yeah.
trees around me.
Yeah.
There's mountains over there. It's
Yeah.
always in nature,
Yeah.
right? So there's this innate attachment
Yeah.
to nature in these spaces, right? When we talk about being in the most beautiful and safe place that we can be in. So there's just a little note that I've put aside saying, okay, we need to be careful with how we just throw nature away, because we always default
Yeah.
back to nature, and it's a part of us. We cannot
Yeah.
separate ourselves from it. The laws that govern nature are the same laws that govern our body.
Yeah.
Now, when you get someone down there,
What's
and
beautiful, I'll just pause there for a moment. What's
yeah,
beautiful is I want to correlate that to my work, is
mm,
every time I get people into a state to consider the vision they have for their lives,
mm,
every single time they describe what you're describing.
yeah,
They want to
nature,
create a life where they're in nature a lot, surrounded
yeah,
by people, the ocean, the sounds of the birds, they're eating nourishing food, they're not working super hard, and that's what I help them do, is create that reality. And what I'm hearing is that,
mm,
I mean, we are nature, and that our true nature, if we take away the conditioning of societal constructs and different things, is, I think both of us, our work is about helping people remember who they really are.
mm,
And when they remember their true desires and values, and then they can create that. And I'm
mm,
even seeing that your work, my personal experience with your work is that takes me even deeper beyond
mm,
this concept of just this life or my next 3 year, vision or 5. It's like there's a potential for possibility of multi dimensions in this reality, living beyond one human experience, to remember the depths of a potential, soul realm, a realm of expansive possibilities connecting to a field or many lifetimes of memories, and remembering, to remember the essence of who I am. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's remembering. That's a very good theme, a very good idea that comes up. And your session actually really reminded me of that as well, because I rarely have I had someone at the depth that I had you, and then someone ask me a question. Usually, I'm the one asking all the questions, and you got to remember. I've got to probably put this in context. New clients, this is not a common theme. This is more about the possibilities of some clients, and it's usually, well, actually, there's no real theme. It's like some people are very spiritual oriented. Some people were not spiritual at all, but they were able to achieve what you achieved, is where you speak as somebody else. So you're lying there and you're speaking to me about yourself in third person. So this has happened to a fair few clients, but not less than half, a lot less than half, maybe about a quarter of clients. But in that space, in this voice that comes through, it's not the same linguistic style. So I'll put that forward. That's an observation. This person speaks usually quite proverbially. So it's as if they're reading out of some text, some sacred textbook. They're using words that usually my clients normally wouldn't use, I've noticed. But there's a sense of knowing and caring for the person. So it's like they're speaking about my client or about yourself
Yeah.
as this all-knowing and all-watching, caretaking guide. And they're saying that, well, yeah, this person's concerned about this. It's like you telling me in that time, it's like, oh yeah, because I'm reading your questions that you want to explore about yourself, and it's like your concern is about yada yada yada. It's like, well, here you are saying to me in this space, yeah, I laugh at that question because he's always so concerned about this. He needs to be more concerned about this, you know?
Yeah.
So it's this sense of knowing, even though you're presenting in a conscious state, look, I'm really concerned about these details. When you enter this depth where you were, this
Yeah.
all-knowing being, which we don't know how to conceptualize or term, this person or this identity says that, yeah, look, that's really not where he needs to be looking. It's this. This has been his issue his whole life. He needs to now head towards this. And they speak very, very graciously and purposefully and all-knowing.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. And so it's like there is this intelligence there
Yeah.
that we don't really know how to conceptualize. But it's this, if we align with that, it seems to extract truth. That's
Yeah.
the thing, because when you hear it back, it's like, yes, you're
Yeah.
gonna you got to listen to your recording at some point.
Yeah.
But it's like when you everyone that goes back to those recordings, or I tell them what was said, it's like, yes, even though I didn't come up with those terms or those explanations or those directions or advice, I'm only asking a very basic question, but that client is telling me from this third person perspective what's good for them. And it's bang on. Everyone extracts knowledge like,
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly what I needed to hear. But it came from them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
We
Well,
just don't know how to identify it.
to give the listener some context, we did this session the other day, and it was, I think, 3 hours or 3.5 hours. Yeah. So I'm mainly
Yeah.
just lying down in my bed, We're on Zoom. Boris takes me into this meditative state, some releasing, there's some yawning, and then I'm kind of in this state of consciousness where, for any of you that have done like a deep sound healing meditation or something like that, it's like you're there, but you're not fully there. So you're not sleeping, but you're conscious and you're there and you're present. And, we went on a journey, right, through these questions and you guiding. And there were moments where I saw my analytical mind. You'd ask a question, my analytical mind would come in, oh, I can't do that. Or, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or da-da. And it's, when you say the depth of I've had, it's the practice I've had at letting go or allowing my nervous system to just open up. And, this is the interesting thing of cause and effect, is because I've done a lot of work in this realm or this thing, it's like I have an ability compared to maybe 5 years ago, my ability of my analytical mind would just completely take over or, conk out, is to open to the possibilities. And the conceptual understanding I have of this is I call this, quantum field, God, higher self, da. And with the experience with you, I've had experiences like that, or plant medicine or shamanic realms. But this experience took me in where, there were specific things you asked me, like, can you speak a light language? And I can't remember the term you used. Maybe you can remember what the term is.
Alahuasca.
So, and I've never heard that. Yeah. And then you are, and I noticed my analytical mind going like, I don't know what that is. I'm going to say the wrong thing. And then surrender. Like there's a conscious process. And then I felt from my heart region and chest an expansion. Yeah. So it's as if something's expanding. And then boom, this language comes out of me in a different voice, as you kind of say, a different tonality, as if it's not Phoenix, the normal speak or body. And then again, after that, you said, can you speak ancient Egyptian? And the same thing, analytical mind's like, oh, he's I know he's had clients speak this before. So I don't want to say the wrong thing. Like, like that's what's going on. And then boom, release that, and boom, expansion of the chest again.
Yeah.
And then something comes out, and I can't remember exactly, but I remember that came out in a very interesting voice. And this is the stuff that, for people to understand, that's like, you just can't make it up. Like, as in, you can't, like, I've never seen this language, this specific voice. It's coming out, channeling so fast and so fluid that it can't be the conscious mind. That's what I'm trying to say by can't make it up. It can't be the conscious mind trying to hack its way through it or get the right answer on a test, an exam. From my experience, it is opening to the quantum realm of all information through space and time. Like if we're talking ancient Egyptian, like, well, was I born there? Was I not? We don't even have to go there. It's opening up to something that exists in whatever multi-dimensional reality we're in. And then this body is a meat bag or a vessel, however you want to look at it, right? The nervous system is literally picking up information through its senses continuously, right? And bringing things back through. And it's practically a body of water with a bit of blood and a bit of chi flowing through. And the clearer that water and that chi and that blood is through all these healing practices and meditation and what, doesn't matter if you're spiritual or not, just certain practices that help you release, going for a run, whatever it may be, massages, that this channel, like you imagine any instrument or tool becomes clear and clean, it can have a greater connection to what people call source. And people don't have to be religious. Many people probably call this God. They hear a voice and think, right? It doesn't matter, the word or the term, but to be open, that's the key, to be open to the possibilities.
Yeah.
And in our session, my question for you is what were some of the things that came through me or our session that, are noticeable or notable for you, in your own journey of learning or seeing, or like what's possible, or, in ways that you're approaching it. What was the lessons or learnings or notable things that came in for you?
Well, you've done things that, well, when I asked, can you speak this language? The reason I ask in that moment is because I can witness that you've achieved a certain level of depth that is above average for my rest of my clients. And in that is usually this potential where we can learn about the human right? It's like, well, what can we do in this space? And what can we retrieve that can help us know, right? Because we're still limited in our knowing. We're still very rigid and concerned about where we go with our beliefs and our paradigms that we share. So I look for these little moments, which I did with you, where I saw a book which I haven't even read. It was the title called Alahuasca, a vibrational language. And I barely knew anything about it, except that it was a language that was formulated, or someone believes it, written by this channeler called Lumari. I still don't even know who that author is. I just saw the title somewhere. And so that came to me in that moment. It's like, well, what can I ask that I could probably assume Phoenix doesn't know about, to see if he can retrieve some sort of information. It's a way of testing, right? So we got a lot out of you. And then I just said, okay, well, do you know this language? And then you started saying this language, right? And in that moment, as soon as you began, it brought me to another client straight away, because another client has done that exact same thing. If you watch the recording, you'll see what you're doing, not just the sound, but what you're doing with your mouth. It's exactly what another client has done when they achieve the same level of depth of somebody else speaking in third person about themselves. They were able to do what you did very, very similarly. And yeah, maybe I could show you at some point if I get approval from that person. So we did that. And then, but I don't know what to make of that, right? There's no way of me verifying that it's something. I think if we can at least compare it to another person, it's like, well, hey, when I asked about Alahuasca, this same result is produced without any prior knowledge. So that's called, it's a pattern. It's worth pursuing, right? Yeah. It's not hard evidence that the science community currently wants, but it's anecdotal evidence of a pattern, a retrievable knowledge that is beyond their experience. That's what I'm looking for. And that's the same with when I asked you about ancient Egyptian. I have a few recordings already with clients speaking ancient Egyptian. And well, I say ancient Egyptian, but I'm not 100%. It's an organized language, which I've had someone from Macquarie University over New South Wales, professor of ancient linguistics, who off the records doesn't want to be associated with that recording. So I can't say their name, but they said it most resembles ancient Egyptian, which is my other client. So when I heard you speak it, you sounded very, very similar to my previous recordings. So what you can do as well is you can even YouTube recordings of ancient Egyptian being spoken and listen to the linguistic style, and find that even if it's not ancient Egyptian, what this professor was able to say, it's definitely of a Mesopotamian origin. He goes, but why we can't say with 100% is because a lot of languages were lost during that time. So we can only assume. And he said, with that small amount of information that we've got of the recording, we can say it most resembles ancient Egyptian. So yours, you can have a listen to, and it's very, very similar. So it's just very interesting that even though you don't know ancient Egyptian, it's like, have a crack in that space and just see what happens, you know? And if it turns out to be accurate, well, it's like, well, hey, what are you supposed to do with that, right? I don't know what to do with that. All I'm saying is that whatever the current model of what we assume is potential for humans is not true. The bar is somewhere beyond that. And that's what I'm trying to get at. I don't know what we are, but I'm just saying we're not what we currently think we are. And every session I do with like yourself or other clients, it's the same thing. We get to these depths where we show that the human is more than what we're being told. And it's worth pursuing because we owe it to the individual on that journey of self-discovery.
Yeah. And I want to bring it back to what I appreciate about your approach is you are bringing a level of scientific rigor. Like it is a testing, it is an experimenting. And I appreciate that because I have an academic background myself. And it's really important to build these bridges to the worlds because, as you say, we are so much more than what the theories and the science is saying today. And when I meet all these people, as you say, struggling with anxiety, confusion, not recognizing their own innate power, because my experience in that moment is it is a power that is beyond me. It can't just be me. It's like the mycelium network. It is all working together. And with power comes responsibility. You know, that's something I've been exploring in my own life, because I'm recognizing this power that is coming through me. And, you know, what that session really did to communicate some of the impact was it took me deeper into trusting my own channel or power, into trusting the letting go, the continuous surrender experiment that I'm on. And it expanded my channeling ability. You know, over the last week, there were moments I got downloads for 3 specific people. And in the past, I may not have been as aware of it because I hadn't had that experience with you, or I was aware, but I didn't act on it. But that session said very clearly, Phoenix, the channel must go online. It must go to every person you meet. And I walked into a shop and there was a friend and I had a message from him and I just channeled it. I said it straight into his face. I said, I have something to tell you. Can I share? He said, yes. And I just said a couple of things. And again, it was like a different voice. And it just went right into his heart and tears started coming through his eyes. And he just went, like what I said, based on what I said, he just went, but I'm scared. And then I did this again with 2 other people. And it's like the information that's coming through me to those people, serving them in their highest potential, is seeing them in their hearts and minds beyond what Phoenix could logically or even rationally or know, right? Based on conversations or knowing it. It goes beyond that. It's just information coming through. And this makes me think of some of those channelers. You know, I can't remember the one that says they channel an alien. I can't remember the name on YouTube, and they're massive. And, you know, I've seen some of these channels. It's like when they're speaking or there's something coming through them, it is so with knowing. It's like there is no doubt. It's not the human personality getting in the way. It's not some ego with some attachment or some idea. And as you've indicated, it's quite biblical. It's also quite general. Yeah. And so it can be applied to many people, like they can make their own meaning of it. But my sense of it is the people that are on stage doing it to masses is they're getting information for the mass. A person that's doing it's like it's serving. It's like imagine the mycelium network is continuously working together to create the best network and support and possibility it can. If we take out the human ego for a sec, we're all just nature running around on legs, meat bags. And actually, that's what we're designed to do in our true nature, is to serve each other, to support, to end these cycles of anxiety and depression and stuckness and, you know, hacking the earth. Like that's what we're designed for. So I'm honoring the work you're doing because it's merging, you know, what we need is that scientific objective reality that people can understand their rational minds, because that gives them safety, with this subjective expansion of the experience to take people beyond what's possible, because our society has got to where it is today from a lot of great evolution, a lot of great thinkers, a lot of great work. But this is how evolution is. It just continuously evolves. And we know we're going beyond where we're currently at.
Oh, yeah. I think it's inevitable. The path that I'm taking is an attempt to bridge the gap of, say, for starters, everything that I'm talking about is not new. It's not my idea. These aren't new experiences. There's a lot of literature already existing on what I'm doing. You know, from the works of the parapsychologists, which by the way, in psychology university, they'll say parapsychology is fringe science or a pseudoscience that we shouldn't even go near. But really it just scares the hell out of the current academic realm. But really, they've got a lot of evidence, if someone's willing to look, of what the stuff I'm talking about. They've got thousands of cases. So it's not new. When this started happening to me, I had to look beyond my current knowledge and beyond the books that were given to me, and beyond the databases that was offered to me. And I found that with some of the original work of Dr. Ian Stevenson with, he was an academic in psychology. He was director of a psychological institute in America, I think Virginia. But he was employed by I'm pretty sure, the American Psychiatric Association to go and debunk the reports of reincarnation, because there's a lot of reports of children saying that they're remembering past lives. So he was this soldier was supposed to go and, you know, deal with all these claims and debunk it. And he eventually jumped ships, didn't he? Yeah. He said, well, we've actually got something here worth pursuing, because when we really look at the evidence and we we look for all the confounding variables that could maybe influence their knowledge or their words. When you control for all those variables, the gist of what they're saying can be verified. And then we've now got over 11,000 reports in journals that they've been approached with scientific rigor, to make sure that this was a case, an isolated case where it hasn't been influenced by people telling them what to say. And it's like, well, if you throw this out, you're just straight away discrediting this person, assuming that the psychiatrist or psychologist or researcher that was working on this doesn't know what they're doing and they're a bit crazy in the head. That's the basic assumption, right? And it's like, well, now you looking at these academics and those academics, these are the intelligent, rational minded gurus, and these are the fluffy academics that don't know what they're talking about because of what they're producing, right? It's like, well, no. Now, if you take a bit of maturity to this approach and you say, okay, I understand why they are not willing to look at the evidence, because there's a lot of money, a lot of time invested into this paradigm, and we sort of need that to be stable because we can at least predict this model. We can at least say, okay, when this issue presents itself through the 5 senses, we can predict 9 times out of 10 what's going to happen and produce this behavioral model to help treat that, or this drug to help treat that. It's very obvious, and that's what they need it to be, because anything that's difficult to grasp is unpredictable and it's bloody scary. Imagine that professor, that researcher, 40 years into his career, fighting for one idea and done a bloody good job of that as well, right? Producing some theory that it's like everyone believes in, and all these institutions have all funded that, and made that what it is, and then now informs all these public sectors. Now imagine someone coming up and saying, well, I've just found out that that's all wrong. How easy and how malleable do you think it is to just transition into that new theory? It's not. There's a lot of money, a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of institutions invested into that idea. It's not an easy transition. So what we're seeing now is the beginning of this transition. And I knew that if I wanted to actually make a difference, I have to approach it with the language that they're currently using, and then slowly just show them what's happening. But it's not like I'm trying to make this a thing. All I'm doing is pursuing truth, which is the original science. We've just got mistaken science for materialist science. That's not science. That's just a version of science that we've adopted because we can predict it. It's empirical, it's observable, but that's not science. Science is this: observing patterns, observing truth. I'm pursuing the best way to make an individual's life more meaningful and experience and overcome their difficulties and blockages. If it means going through these sessions where they're speaking other languages, they're seeing past lives, they're retrieving knowledge they've never experienced, it's like, well, if that's working, bloody go down that path, or else you're a coward, really. That's what I'm saying. Fuck it, I just said it out loud.
Yes, you did.
You're a coward if you don't go down this path.
And I'm acknowledging the passion in you. And, I want to end on this note is that every one of us that understands some depth to it or is passionate about helping humanity and the earth and everything plays a different role in this. My role might be more on the ground and, doing all these really pseudo things, right? Boris's role is building the bridges and bringing the rigor and the science and the theories that I don't read all those books. I don't know all the things. I may know them embodied, but I don't have a conceptual understanding. And then, you add different people who play different roles. Is for all the people committed to this is to know that there are people out there in the world playing their part in this.
Yes.
And we all play a part,
No, you're right. And I don't think that I've got the best position. It's not that I'm playing my part and I'm aware of my part. And sometimes I look at the people that are just really believing, we're talking the real spiritual types, yourself included. It's like there's a slight envy that this person is just not caring too much about needing to be accepted with their ideas. It's like you saw what it was like. The moment you step into who you could be and believe that, right? Things open up to you, man. It's like the moment you're willing to deviate from the narrative that's been provided to you, you will find yourself. You'll make a few failures. Obviously, you're gonna fall. Hey, Jesus fell 3 times before he was able to be reborn, right? The whole idea of you going up your hill, pitching your own cross and being ready to die is killing off that old version of yourself so you
Yes.
can be reborn as something else. You can only do that by going against what everyone's dishing at you, you know? So it's like, there is this slight envy as well. It's like, well, look at that person, you know, they're not caring anymore about the rest of
Yeah.
the paradigm. They're just going for themselves, man. And they're living in this harmony with community, with
Yeah.
all the sensations that the world is offering, not just the through linguistics and communication, verbal communication. It's like,
Yeah.
no, they are feeling everything, right? And so we
Yeah.
know this. The moment someone has a spiritual experience, it
Yeah.
goes beyond explanation, doesn't it? The more you try to explain a spiritual experience, it
Yeah.
starts to lose its power and value the more you try to
Yes.
explain it away.
That's
It's
it.
a very individual
Yeah.
experience. And
Yeah.
the only way we make it community is if others feel something similar. And then we can all agree that there is something that can be felt that is valuable and beyond
Yeah.
our communication ability, but it's still something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to thank you, like, just for bringing your knowledge, your wisdom, and your passion, like right there at the end, just feeling your passion. And I'm sure that many listeners will have gotten so much from this. Not only hear like your work, but your personal journey into it, your investment in it. And I really want to thank you for being here with me today, and for me being part of the work as well, getting to experience that.
Mm.
Really blessed.
I, of course, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to unravel. I mean, you can hear how fast I talk sometimes. It's like I am very passionate about this.
Yeah.
I feel very, very blessed to be in this line of work. And I'm finding myself as I go. But every time someone like yourself gives me the opportunity to hold them in that space and be vulnerable, it's like, man, well, my life is given meaning in that moment because I'm of use, right? I'm of utility.
Mm.
I've found myself being of service in some way,
Mm.
and I get to learn about the human potential at the same time. So it's like, yeah, yeah. So I'm very thankful as well at the same time.
Received. I get that too. And to all the listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you want to continue, I'll drop the links to Boris's work here. And if you want to continue hearing conversations like this to bring you home to your heart, to serve you in your highest potential, hit the subscribe button and follow along on the channels, and sending you all many blessings. And remember to be free, to be 100% authentically you in every space and everything you do.